Okay, welcome everyone. So tomorrow night is the beginning of a new month, the month of Tammuz. It's a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, Thursday and Friday. And so the series is Seasons of the Soul. So every month, depending on when this class comes, but here we're right before Rosh Chodesh. So tonight we're going to be learning about the month of Tammuz. And we're going to do what we usually do, is that we're going to look at the various associations that we are given for each of the months. We're going to look at the tribe of the month, the letter of the month, the sense of the month, the permutation of God's name for the month, the ruling planet for the month, and the element of the month. So we're going to begin with that in Jewish tradition, there are 4 seasons. Each one has 3 months. And the summer months begin with Tammuz. So this follows pretty much the solar, because the solstice is in 2 weeks. And that usually is a delineation between spring and summer. So the lunar calendar is closely connected to that. So Tammuz begins the summer, the hot months. Tammuz, Av, and Elul are the hot months. And I should mention that other than a few absolutely scorching days that we had in Israel, we had really a very mild spring, very, very mild. And like every day that it's not scorching hot here, we're appreciative for. So, but we are moving into the hotter months. So we're going to start with a concept that Rabbi Ginsburg teaches all the time. And now that I mentioned his name, I have to also mention that we should continue to daven for Harav Yitzchak Feivish ben Braina Malka. Should have a refuah shlema and should return to his full strength. So he teaches a concept that was given over by Avraham Abulafia about 1,000 years ago. He was very controversial, but he was a great Kabbalist, and as the years go by, he's appreciated more and more. But he had a concept called shalem v'chetzi, a whole and half, meaning mathematically 1 to a half or 2 to 1. And Rav Ginsburg, in many of his different teachings, will point out that a certain concept or 2 words or 2 numbers or the gematrias come out to be shalem v'chetzi, a whole and a half. Now, probably the primary one is the first 2 letters of God's 4-letter name are a yud, which equals 10, and a hey, which equals 5. So this is a classic case of shalem v'chetzi. 5 is a half of 10. And these 2 letters are actually a name of God in of themselves, Yud and Hey. So this is like the archetypal example of shalem v'chetzi. We don't have the time today, but if you look at the measurements of what went into the Mishkan, you'll see shalem v'chetzi over and over and over again. This idea of a whole and a half, and the measurements of the Mishkan, which is a bit surprising because the Mishkan represents the microcosm of the macrocosm. So you would think the last place that you would want halves is in the Mishkan. But again, if you go to Parshat Truma, Parshat Ki Titzaveh, you'll see how many times a half comes up and the exact ratio of a whole to a half. So the reason I'm mentioning this is Rav Ginsburg has really a very, very important Torah about the month of Tammuz that relates to this. He explains that Tammuz is the fourth month of the year. And we have a certain flow, beginning with Nisan. Nisan's the month of Pesach. So we begin with it's the first of the months of the year. It's the new year of the months. So we count the months from Nisan. So Tammuz again is the fourth month. So we start with Nisan with the redemptive energy of coming out of Egypt. And then we start counting Sfirot Omer towards receiving the Torah at Sinai. So the whole 7 weeks, we are, as it were, climbing the mountain to Sinai. The whole energy is just going uphill. Then when we get to Shavuos, excuse me, Moshe literally climbed the mountain to receive the Torah. And on Shavuos, we heard the 10 commandments straight from God. And then Moshe was on the mountain for 40 days. When did he come down from the mountain? On the 17th of Tammuz, which is about a little bit more than halfway through this month. And so Yud Zayin equals 17. The 17th day of Tammuz, Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the 2 tablets of the law. So Rav Ginsburg explained, one might think that what could be higher than Shavuos? What could be higher than receiving the Torah, the word straight from God? But really, all of that was for Moshe to now bring the Torah down to the Jewish people, and that we would take the Torah into Israel and create a Torah-based society, which would hopefully enlighten the entire world. So when Moshe came down with the tablets on the 17th of Tammuz, 17 again equals good, Tov. So the 17th of Tammuz was supposed to be, in a sense, the greatest day since the creation of the world. God had given the Torah, but Moshe only now was bringing it down. What happened though? The golden calf. And Moshe broke the tablets, and the whole incident with the golden calf was one of the most catastrophic events in Jewish history. So what had meant, in a sense, to be in potential was supposed to be the greatest day, the goodness of Tammuz to be revealed, turned into, it's now a fast day for us. The 17th of Tammuz is a fast day, the beginning of the 3 weeks that lead to Tisha B'Av. So Rabbi Ginsburg said the entire year turns on the 17th of Tammuz. In other words, for the first 4 months, we have an up energy. It's just going up and up and up and up and up. And then what happens with the golden calf, in a sense, a great fall. So if this is the 4th month, if Tammuz is the 4th month of the year, that means that there are 8 more months of the year. So that's the Shalem V'Chetzi. That the first 4 months of the year leading to Yud Zayin B'Tammuz is, as it were, the half. And then what's the energy of the rest of the 8 months of the year? Is, according to Rav Ginsburg, is tshuva. Is tshuva for what we did at the golden calf. And then in the upcoming weeks, we're going to describe the whole energy of Tammuz and Av and the fast days, the destruction of the temples, exile. And then it leads into Elul, where we start the process of introspection. Then it's Tishrei with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And that energy, in a sense, remains until the new year of Nisan again. So Rav Ginsburg explains that the whole calendar, in a sense, can be seen as a manifestation of Shalem v'Chetzi. So that's a good lead-in to understanding the energy of Tammuz. The energy of Tammuz, as we're going to see, has enormous potential and an enormous danger of collapse. It's like the energy of summer. Summer is high energy, high intensity. People like are ready to like go on vacation. Schools let out, colleges let out. Most people take their vacations in the summer. It's this idea that there's lots of energy, lots of potential, but there's also the danger of too much energy, as we're going to see. So now we're going to add the permutation of God's name. The 4 letters of God's name, because 2 of the letters are the same, they're 2 hey, so you can combine them in 12 different ways. And so every month, there is a permutation of God's name that represents the energy of that month. So the first month of the year, Nisan, the 4 letters are the 4 letters in the order that we know of God's 4-letter name. Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. And like we said, we started with Nisan, and it's like a straight up energy till the 17th of Tammuz. So the permutation for God's name for this month is the exact opposite. It's God's name backwards. And that represents that the energy that was all going up turns quite literally to the opposite. So it's Hey and Vav and Hey and Yud. It's God's 4-letter name backwards. And so this is a perfect description of the Shalem v'Chetzi that we were explaining, and how the energy goes in one direction until Yud Zayin b'Tammuz, and then it in a sense crashes. So this is now, we're going to connect this energy with the tribe that is associated with this month, and that is Reuven. Reuven is the firstborn of Yaakov, and his name comes from Ra'u Ben. Leah named him, look, a son, see a son. Ra'u Ben. So the name of Reuven has to do with sight. Now, for those who have been following this series, every month has a sense. And there's 5, we know of the 5 physical senses, but the Sefer Yetzirah talks about 12 senses. So it's the 5 physical senses and another 7. So the sense of this month is sight. So here we see how the tribe goes exactly with the sense of the month. It's the idea of sight. Now, how can we understand that? So next month of Av is the sense of hearing. So Chassidut explains that on the 1st of Tammuz, the 12 spies began their trip to scout out the land of Israel. And if you remember, it's last week's Parsha. They were in Israel for 40 days. Well, actually, the whole trip was 40 days. It began from the desert on the 1st of Tammuz, and they spent the whole month, and then they came back. It was actually the ninth day of Av, which later became what we call Tisha B'Av. So what's explained is during the month of Tammuz, what were the spies doing? They were scouting out the land with their sight. They were checking out the land with their sense of sight. And when they came back, so again, it's last week's Parsha, they gave a very negative report and basically told the people, we are not going to be able to go. The people of Canaan are too strong for us. We will not succeed. And it says that the people stood at their tents and cried and said, let's pick a new leader and let's go back to Egypt. So this was a catastrophe, just like the golden calf. Now, that's why we have what are called the 3 weeks, the fast day of Yud Zayin B'Tamuz and the fast day of Tisha B'Av. And so here, their sight, what they saw, they did not analyze correctly. And then when they said an evil report, they said what's called Lashon Hara. They said evil speech about Israel, and the people listened to it. That's the sense. They didn't have to listen to it. They could have. 2 of the spies came back and said, no, we could do this. Of course we can do it. God promised. Of course we can do this. So they chose to listen to the 10 that said we can't do it. So here we see that these 2 senses are essentially connected to these 2 months. This month, the sense of sight, and the next month of Av, the sense of hearing. So obviously this is connected to Reuven. Now who is the tribe of next month? Shimon. What Shimon comes from the word Shema, to hear. So you see that these connections are so right on. Okay, now let's go back a little bit to Reuven and understand a deeper connection he has with this month. When Rachel dies, so the Torah says that Yaakov moved in, as it were, with Rachel's handmaiden, Bilhah. And Reuven considered that a slight to his mother. And it says that he changed the beds. And it actually, in the Torah itself, it says that he slept with Yaakov's concubine. But the sages said he did not sleep with her, but he took Yaakov's bed out as a statement that you should not, this is a slight to my mother. Well, Yaakov did not appreciate that. So when it was time to give blessings for his sons, he begins by saying that, Reuven, you're my firstborn. You're the first of my strength. But then he says, you are pachaz kamayim. You are unstable like water. And he rebuked him for having not shown enough respect for his father. He might have thought that he was defending the honor of his mother, but he did it in a way that dishonored his father. So on a deeper level, Yaakov is pointing out that Reuven is a bit, I'm not saying unbalanced when we usually think of someone who's mentally unbalanced, but he has a turbulent kind of psyche. And we see it in two other episodes where he tries to save Yosef from the brothers, but he can't pull it off. He just doesn't have the stature or the emotional stability to pull it off. Later, when the brothers go down to Egypt to get food, and they don't realize that Yosef is the ruler of Egypt, and he accuses them of being spies. And he says, he takes Shimon and he puts him in jail, and he says, until you bring your younger brother down, because they had told him they had a younger brother, when I see your younger brother, I'll know you're telling the truth. So Yaakov didn't want to send Benjamin because he already thought that he had lost Yosef. And so as part of it, Reuven says, I will guarantee that that I'll bring Benjamin back. And if I don't, you can kill my two sons. And people ask, what kind of response is that? Like, who would offer that if I don't keep my promise, you can kill my two sons? So these are just a couple of examples of what Yaakov said. You're unstable like water. Now, I'm going to tell you a very, very deep understanding. Like, why was that? What was it about Reuven? So this is a very, very deep idea. If you remember, Yaakov works 7 years to marry Rachel. And then on wedding night, Lavan puts Leah under the chuppah, the canopy. And we're told that Rachel and Leah looked virtually alike, except their eyes. And that night, so Yaakov slept with Leah, thinking it was Rachel. He thought he had married Rachel. In the morning, it's like, Boker Tov, Boker Tov, it's Leah. But if you understand what happened here, actually we're told that when husband and wife are together intimately, it's very, very important what the thoughts are. Very, very important that the thoughts remain pure. So here, Yaakov's thoughts are with Rachel, but it's not Rachel, it's Leah. And that energy was manifest in Reuven. It's a very, very deep understanding. And that's why we can propose that Reuven got in trouble because he moved the beds of his father. In other words, he was living out a certain unstable foundation of his own soul. So this is a very deep thing to ponder. But this is connected because Yaakov says, Pachaz kamayim, you're unstable like water. What is the element of the month of Tammuz? Now remember, Tammuz is Cancer, the fourth, meaning the astrological sign of Cancer, which is the crab. And it's a water sign. The way that the 12 months work is there are 3 cycles of going through fire, earth, air, and water. Nisan was fire, Iyar was earth, Sivan is air, and Tammuz is water. So you see how everything is aligning here? Reuven is the tribe of the month. His name means sight. The sense is sight. Yaakov describes Reuven as being unstable like water. The element of this month is water. And there is an instability in the month of Tammuz because there's a tremendous possibility of good. Moshe coming down with the tablets of the law and the fulfillment of really the reason for creation. And then there is the golden calf and the great fall. We're going to be talking more about this in the weeks to come because we're going to get deeper into these, what are called the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th day of Tisha B'Av. There are 2 fast days. And the period is called the 3 weeks, or Bein HaMitzarim, between the boundaries, between the limited boundaries. Okay, now I want to take the idea of sight to a much, much deeper place here, again, to understand the energy of Tammuz. So we're told that this world, according to the Arizal, is called Olam HaTikun, the world of rectification. And the Arizal explains the previous world was called Olam HaTohu, the world of chaotic energy. It's the same word that's used in the 2nd verse of the Torah. Ha'aretz hayta tohu v'vohu. The earth was chaotic and void. So this previous world had tremendous lights, tremendous pure, divine, holy energy. The problem was that the initial vessels of creation were not strong enough to hold this light. And that's where we have the concept that probably most of you have heard is called Shvirat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels. That these vessels of creation, the light just burst them as they weren't mature enough to handle the light. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because according to Kabbalah, we know that there are 4 worlds, 4 Kabbalistic worlds. Each world is more spiritual, more ethereal, closer to pure godliness. Ours is what we'll call the lowest world, the material world. But each world is successively closer to a pure spiritual reality. But above the 4 worlds, there's really a 5th world, and it's called Adam Kadmon, primordial man. And in very symbolic language, but the symbol is important, we're told that the world of Tohu, the previous world, came from the eyes of Adam Kadmon. Now, again, this is very obviously we're using human language, but what does it mean? It came from the eyes, and so this has to do with the whole sense of sight. In the 3rd passage of the Shema that we say every day, so we say, Lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem. Don't go after the musings of your heart and your eyes that can lead you astray. And there's here we say first the heart and then the eyes. Don't go after the longings in a negative sense, the desires of your heart and your eyes that lead you astray. But in another statement, it says it in the opposite. It says the eye sees, the heart longs, and the body does the act. We'll take an example. My eye sees the chocolate cake. I'm on a diet. I'm really not supposed to be eating chocolate cake, but I'm looking at the chocolate cake, and all of a sudden my heart starts, well, what would be the big deal? Just one little piece. And then the body goes and eats it. So the idea of the eyes is that we have to be very, very careful with what we're looking at and how we're looking at it. So this idea is very connected to the month of Tammuz. And that's what we're trying to say here is there's a tremendous light in Tammuz. Moshe Rabbeinu is up on the mountain with God, getting the whole Torah. He's going to come down with the tablets of the law. Summer is coming. Freedom is in the air. It's high energy. But if we're not careful with high energy, it can break the vessels. So this is very connected to the breaking of the tablets. And we're told that the breaking of the tablets, the story, the incident, is an archetypal mirror image of the concept of Shvirat HaKelim. That the light of Torah was too much for the people at that point. If you remember, according to the Midrash, it says that every word that God spoke at the Ten Commandments, in fact, we're told we only really heard 2 of the commandments directly from God, because the Midrash says that every word that God spoke, our souls left our bodies. The experience was beyond anything we can even imagine, that the energy was so revealed and tremendous that people's souls just left their body, and that God sent angels to bring the souls back to the body. And then when God said the second word, their souls fled again. So, and then God brought them back. And then the people came after the first 2 commandments and said, it's in the text, it's not even a midrash, in the text, the people said, you talk to God and tell us what he says, because we're all going to die. It's too much for us. So the whole idea of the breaking of the luchot, and as we're going to discuss, the whole idea of the destruction of the temples that occur between Yud Zayin B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. This is a archetypal, symbolic representation and playing out in history the concept that we're talking about of Shvirat HaKelim. And we're actually told, there's a midrash, how did the whole thing of the golden calf start? So we're told that there was a misunderstanding that the people had as to when Moshe was going to come back. Moshe told him, I'm coming back after 40 days. But there was a misunderstanding. Do you count the first day? Because it was like a half a day. And so the people expected him to come down at a certain hour, and he didn't show. And 6 hours later, he still hadn't showed. And so the people panicked. We could say they panicked. But the Midrash says, why did they come to a conclusion that Moshe wasn't coming back? Well, it's Jewish time. Everyone's late. Like, what's the big deal? So it says that the Satan showed in the sky a picture of Moshe lying dead. And people saw it. That's the connection I'm trying to make. They saw this vision, and they interpreted it as meaning Moshe is never coming back. We need another leader. We need another something. And they ended up with the golden calf. So here we see again, when it says in the third passage of the Shema, Lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei nechem asher atem zonim achareihem. Don't go after the heart and the eyes that trick you. Now, one other connection, and then we're gonna put it together, is that in Hebrew, in English, the name of the astrological sign is Cancer. Excuse me, it's Cancer. In Hebrew, it's Sartan, and that is the Hebrew word for, unfortunately, the disease called cancer. But if you look in the Hebrew, 3 of the letters of cancer, Sartan, is Satan, the Satan. Satan, Sartan. It's like, as we know, a very, very negative reality. Having cancer is a very negative reality. So I want to end with a beautiful gematria that it's explained in Chassidut. That what does it mean that the Satan showed them a picture of Moshe who's dead in heaven? So basically, it's describing what's called the wild imagination. In other words, the people saw Moshe's not coming, and so their imaginations started to run amok. I think everyone knows in your own life how one fearful thought, one paranoid thought can lead to a chain of thoughts that before you know it, oh my gosh, like how did the whole world is ending. That's the way that the mind works. It's called koach hamidameh. In Hebrew, imagination is called the power of imagination. Koach hamidameh. And in gematria, koach hamidameh equals egel hazahav, the golden calf. In other words, again, they imagined Moshe dead because they were beginning to be fearful and have paranoia. And so before they knew it, their mind was running, and Moshe's never coming back, he's dead. And so in their wild imagination, they imagined, oh, we have a solution, the golden calf. We'll make a golden calf. That will be our leader. But this tells us how the power of imagination, when it starts to run and you let it run, we have the power to stop it. But sometimes we don't feel that we can stop it. And before we know it, we're thinking the worst thoughts, the most negative thoughts. And like we wake up and we say like, oh my God, how did I get to thinking like this? But that just tells us when it says, don't go after the desires of your heart and your eyes that lead you astray. So we'll put all this together that this month of Tammuz has tremendous potential, tremendous. I should mention what I didn't, something very good about Reuben, because we're told that when his father rebuked him for what he had done, he did total and complete tshuva. And it's even brought down the Midrash that he's the first person to do tshuva. In a certain way, he's the first person to do tshuva. So that's also the energy of this month. That even when we fall, there's still that energy that can pick us up again. So I just want to bless everyone that this month, which has, in a sense, we're beginning a new cycle. We're moving into the summer. As Rabbi Ginsburg says, we're almost at the apex of the chetzi, of the half. And the prophets tell us that in the future, all of our fast days will be fast days for the temple will be turned into holidays. Meaning that this month still has the potential that the 17th of Tammuz will turn into a very, very joyous holiday. And not what it is today, which is a fast day. So hopefully we each in our own way, we can connect to the great potential of this month and make whatever tikkunim we can, whatever rectifications we can to try to fix the fall that happened and the exile that came and the destructions of the temple. And Baruch Hashem, we're back in Israel. And again, we have the potential to fix it all. The world is on the cusp of tremendous things, a great redemption. And hopefully this month will be the beginning of that energy. Okay.